Thank you, everybody, for coming out to this Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on this very cold, frigid day. First item on our agenda is a citizens' general discussion. Is there anybody here who has anything general that they would like to discuss before we get into the meat of the agenda? All right, then I'll go ahead and close the general discussion. First item is the minutes. Consider approval of January 15, 2025 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I'll give it to Nick. All those in favor of approving the minutes for January 25, say aye.
Aye.
All right, next item, case number RZ 2025-004. Applicant Scott Allen, representing Stephenville Rentals LLC, is requesting a rezone for property located at 0 Forest, being parcel R69044 of the A0515 Motley William Abstract of the City of Stephenville, Erath County, Texas, from R1 Single Family Housing to R2.5 Integrated Housing. Mr. Killen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Commissioners. Mr. Allen is here with us tonight. He is asking for a rezone of actually 3 parcels along Forest Lane. The first parcel we're talking about is in your packet, the one at the top of the screen. It's yellow in color. It's currently zoned R1. There's also a piece of it R2. This is parcel 69044 as mentioned, and we're going to act on each one of these separately, but basically it's the same request. The first one is currently zoned R1. Future land use is single family, using our 2008 comprehensive zoning. If you look at our comprehensive plan, however, for our 2050 comprehensive plan, it is designated as complete neighborhood. Complete neighborhood allows for a mix of housing types and encouraged to accommodate a range of residents. Mr. Allen does not have a site plan specifically laid out yet, and even though R2.5 does allow for single-family duplex, 2 to 4 family homes, townhomes, etc., I believe what Mr. Allen is wanting to do is stay with the single-family structure and build it on a lot that would allow him to target affordable housing here in the city. And so again, Mr. Allen is available for any questions or comment or any questions from the commission. Again, he's asking for rezone to R2.5. We are working with some of Mr. Allen's staff, and we have seen some preliminary site plans and provided some comments back. Forest Road is a collector street, and it will require additional right-of-way, and we have communicated that to his office and be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Steve?
With the other development on down the road there, how's that going to affect the traffic study that was done for the previous development, and is it going to increase to a point where TxDOT's going to have to do something?
So that's a great question, Commissioner Leslie. We do have currently working with the other developer for that parcel, and we will be bringing that to you in March for further consideration. So without divulging too much about that application that we're dealing with, there'll be independent developments, of course, and if it hits a threshold of more than 1,000 trips for the development, then a TIA would be required, traffic impact analysis. And that would be determined by the project engineer at the time of application and review by city staff.
And that's what the current road status as it is now, like a one-lane county road?
It'd be based on current conditions and the future development of the forest lane.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Hang on, I'll open up a public hearing in a little bit, yeah. Other questions for Steve? All right, Mr. Allen, would you like to add anything?
If you want me to.
Please.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for getting out on a very cold day for serving the city on a day like this. It's hard to resist the temptation to stay home. But anyway, thank you for coming. There are I think, Steve, I think we broke it out into 3 different applications.
Yes, sir.
The entire track is this small track is 7.2 or 3 acres. I'll show you where it is right quick, just so you know. This track right there is owned by the bank. This is where the new bank is, out on North Loop. And right next to it, they have a lot that goes back, including that yellow part. Property you're zoning, your requested zoning is around the bank lot there. A little bit, it's all 3 of those tracks right there. Or again, it's about 7, not very large track. The preliminary plans that I've had a rough draft from a surveyor, I wanna build regular sized lots. I know there are a lot of people putting in small lots, but I'm gonna put in 75-foot lots by probably 100 or 115 or something like that. Whatever we can get on there, but I don't wanna do just tiny, tiny lots where the structures are right up against each other. I'm gonna let them have a yard of some kind. The development, I think, will be one straight street with a cul-de-sac. And I'm gonna do it in 2 phases because the cost gets prohibitive in something like this. And then a street that just comes off of that back to the Forest Lane. So it's gonna be a primary housing development, but you could build houses, duplexes, or a townhouse. I don't plan on doing any townhouses. Don't really prefer that to be done. I'd rather just be duplexes and houses. And I've talked with Steve, we decided that was the best application, was to put it all in 2.1, I think.
2.5.
So the idea, this is just the first step, because there's gonna have to be a lot of bids and things put together to meet all the requirements to have it broken into lots. But it'll be a nice subdivision. The nice thing about it is that you have that commercial bank on the front, and then right behind it, you have a little bit of housing, or housing tracks, a little bit heavier use, and then right behind the part that we've cleared, behind the 7 acres, that's going to, I'm aware that that is going to be transferred to the people across the street that are doing that subdivision over there. And so they're gonna, I won't have anything to do with that, but I'll probably draw the papers, but that gets their acreage behind this track into the same ownership as the property across the road. That's 60-something acres, or 38 acres, I think is what it is. So I'm just doing this to put some houses there, some duplexes there, maybe a townhouse, but I doubt it. So it'll just be houses and duplexes, what I'm anticipating. And I'm making the lots big so they're not so crowded up, and they'll have a line. And that's all I have to say, unless you have a question.
Any questions, Mr. Allen?
So you're still targeting single families is the idea?
Yeah. Single family and duplexes.
It wouldn't be student housing.
Ma'am, no, hang on. We'll come to you, and then I promise you, we'll get it all answered. It's just elaborate process.
If some rental property were built there, they possibly could lease it to a college kid, I suppose, if they wanted to, whoever owned it. I would be selling some lots off. I might build 1 or 2 duplexes myself.
All right.
All right. Anybody have anything else?
Thank you, sir.
I think it'd probably save you some time, but I just suggest you might want to consider all 3.
I think we have to do them all separate, yes?
Have to act on it separately.
Yeah, we have to act on them separately.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. All right, I'm now going to open a public hearing, and if you wish to speak for or against this, please come up to the microphone, state your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
I was just hi, I'm Kathy Doctor. I'm
have an interest in Slade Capital that is the 50 acres next
And
to that.
I'm sorry, if you could state your address just for the record.
Slade Capital, Robert J. Glasgow Loop, and tiny slice on Forest Road and a slice on Highland View. That's mostly all single-family homes in that area. And I just, if we don't have to change the zoning on it, and it could meet the townhomes or
Ma'am.
duplexes.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, I'm curious about what the integrated housing means, because I read that there are some other uses of that. So that's, I guess, what I would like some clarification on the difference in those
Right.
zonings and how, what could be built on that if not duplexes and single family.
Okay. Any other concerns?
Yes. Were there to be, because I understand across Forest Road, that is going to be coming next month to be rezoned also to integrated housing. If that were a 50-acre area, 36 on one side, 15 on the other, if that were all student housing, what needs to be done to Forest Road and the traffic count that could be? Because I guess that could be a 2,000 bed unit.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak for or against this rezone request? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Steve, could you offer some clarification on the specific zoning?
Yes, ma'am. So the permitted uses for R2.5 would be single-family homes, 2 to 4 family dwellings, townhome dwellings, and condominiums. Each type of housing would require a different type of lot dimension and setback requirement, so that's specified in the land use regulations. When Mr. Allen comes forward with a site plan, we will review that site plan with him through the development review process, and we will look at that site plan and make sure he meets all the setbacks and lot dimensions required. One thing I'd like to point out also is that he is currently zoned for R1, so he can build single-family homes in the area identified as yellow. And then for his property that is in blue, he could already build 2 to 4 family homes. So the only thing that he's doing with the R2.5 zoning is it does grant him the ability to allow smaller lot dimensions if his site plan necessitates that. He's indicated that he doesn't want to use smaller lot sizes. But it does open the door for townhomes and condominiums. The thing about townhomes is that they require a 30 by 100 foot lot dimension unless there's a variance granted. And then generally what we see with townhomes is that it's primarily their construction methodology that delineates it from a multifamily structure. But generally you also see that they are built to where they can be platted individually and sold as single-family homes. They're actually, according to the international codes, a townhome is designated as a single-family residence. So that's some clarification. I don't know if it addresses all of your questions, but I'd be glad to answer anything that the commission may have.
I think the key thing there is.
Integrated housing can be resident home.
No, no. This would be individually platted, so sold to individual families. So we're not looking at resident halls, multifamily, or anything of that nature.
Madam
So-
Chair, I believe
Integrated housing.
perhaps she has read the conditional uses.
Oh.
And so let me provide some clarification on that.
Okay.
A conditional use is only granted if the developer comes to the Planning and Zoning Commission and then subsequently the City Council and asks for a conditional use. It's not a permitted use unless it is granted a conditional use permit through a separate action. So tonight, we're only looking at the R2.5 zoning, and it would only include those 4 permitted uses that I mentioned earlier. Single-family home, 2 to 4 family dwellings, townhome, and condominium.
Got it.
Thank you.
Got it. Okay. All right, commissioners, we need a motion and then we can discuss.
Make a motion that we recommend to City Council approval of case number RZ 2025-004.
Second.
Do we need discussion?
I'm just worried that we're starting to oversaturate a little bit, and with that area, the traffic is gonna be tremendous, I feel like, with everything that's going in addition to this, and if he's got some site plans coming, it might be nice to see how that's gonna fit into all this, is my only concern.
We desperately need affordable housing, and so I don't see that as a problem. I see needing to widen the road, make it, more accessible, but that'll come with traffic studies.
And that'll be on taxpayer too.
Well, not necessarily. It might come through the developer, right? Yeah, the developer would be responsible for that. So the way I'm seeing it is, affordable houses on decent sized lots is a win. That's my vote.
What's the criteria to make it affordable housing?
So, I believe affordable housing is defined differently from city to city. I was reading something earlier today from another city that is 60% of the HUD median income level. We don't really have that designated here. What we are seeing though is that the typical home on a typical size lot with development cost and the cost per square foot for a builder, you're looking at the ballpark of about $350,000, $400,000 on the low end. And so anyone that can get below that $350,000 mark in today's market is definitely building affordable housing by today's standards. We don't, again, have it necessarily defined by median income in relation to HUD standards or anything of that nature. But just from the development that we're seeing across the city, the price, starting price points, I think we have some townhomes, 2-bedroom townhomes right now that are being marketed at $289, and that might be one of the lowest price points I've seen for new development in the city.
But something else I'm thinking about also is that with all the 2.5s that have been put in, not many of them have been acted on in the last several months since they've been approved, from what I'm seeing, but there's really not that many places in town that allow for just single-family buildings, from what I'm also seeing, so that's just kind of where I'm at.
2.5 allows for single family,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
not much of it's happening, so.
but it allows
But
for.
yeah, it allows for it. And- All right, we ready to vote? Do we, well, we'll try it. The motion stands to recommend to council approval of this rezone request. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those against?
Hey,
Okay. Next up, case number RZ 2025-005, applicant Scott Allen, representing Stephenville Rentals LLC, is requesting a rezone for property located at Zero Forest, being parcel R72455 of the A0515 Motley William Abstract of the City of Stephenville, Ayotte County, Texas, from R2, 1-2 family housing, to R2.5 integrated housing. Mr. Killen?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, not a lot of additional comment here, other than we are looking at the middle parcel, which is blue, and that is current zoning of R2, which is 2 to 4 family dwelling, and so that would also be a use by right as currently zoned. And the only statement here is that it is, in comparison to the previous property, it is zoned R2, 2 to 4 family. And no further comments from staff, ma'am.
Okay, questions for Steve? I assume you got nothing new to add, Mr. Allen? Yeah. Okay, I'll go ahead and open a public hearing. Does anybody wish to ask additional questions, or? Come on up and again, just
Yeah,
state,
Just
state
like
your
to
name
know a
and-
little more, Kathy
Yeah.
Boucher again. I own Slade Capital. I'd just like to understand a little bit more what has to be done on Forest Road. I know you mentioned that it was a collector street,
Correct.
and so how those improvements would work. Also, the sewage, and which I believe is across my property, how some of the infrastructure works. If you could explain that, as part of planning and zoning.
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
So Forest Lane is identified as a collector street, which requires a 70-foot right-of-way. We currently have approximately 50-foot right-of-way on Forest Street. So as developments come in and move forward with the development process, they are required to dedicate the additional right-of-way. Here, let's say the delta is 20 feet total. So Mr. Allen would dedicate 10 foot of right-of-way on his side of Forest Street. And as the development on the other side of Forest Street comes on, they would be required to develop the additional 10 feet of right-of-way for Forest Lane. The next question was related to utilities. If utilities are not in the area, then the developer would be required to extend those utilities to their property and across the entire frontage of their property along Forest. So if it has to come across private property, it would be the developer's responsibility to grant or to obtain a private easement across that private property from the private property owner. If they were not able to get that easement, then the only other way would be to extend the utilities at their cost from whatever closest point is to their property line and across the entire frontage.
I failed to close the public hearing. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? All right, closing the public hearing. We need a motion, commissioners.
I'd like to recommend the council, or to approve case number RZ 2025-005.
Second.
I think we're good to go. All those in favor of recommending council approval of this rezone request, say aye. Those against?
No.
All right. Next up, case number RZ 2025-006, applicant Scott Allen, representing Stephenville Rentals LLC, is requesting a rezone for property located at 0 Forest, being parcel R69040, block 155, lot 17, PTOF of the S2600 City Edition of the City of Stephenville, Erath County, Texas, from R2, 1-2 family housing to R2.5 integrated housing. Mr. Killen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for the parcel in the middle map. It's outlined in blue. It's directly adjacent to the Wellington State Bank parcel. Again, this one is currently zoned R2, 2 to 4 family, which is a use by right. They're asking for a rezone to R2.5, and with that, no further comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and open a public hearing. Does anybody wish to speak for or against, or have any questions? Closing the
So
public.
the same infrastructure question.
The same,
Same answer.
the same answers for the same,
Yes.
yes, okay.
What would he be doing with Forest and?
Oh, it's the exact same answers he gave before.
Any questions?
No, when I built Wellington Bank, we extended it 10 foot anyways, and we have plenty of utilities on Forest Lane. Because that's where we ran all of our stuff.
Thank you,
So it's
sir.
already starting to be widened.
Okay.
There is a sewage line, I see the
Yeah.
sewage line on the back.
Sewage goes up Forest Lane.
Thank you, sir.
All right, commissioners, we need a motion.
I motion that we recommend the council to rezone case number RZ 2025-006.
00,
Oh, is it 005?
wait, no, you're right, 006, you're right.
Second.
Was it a second from you, Tyler?
Yes, ma'am.
All those in favor of recommending to council approval of this rezone request, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Nay.
All right. All right, so that is our last one for that, correct?
Last one for Mr.
For
Allen.
Mr. Allen, all right.
Mr.
So,
Park.
Mr. Allen, thank you for coming tonight, ma'am. This will next go to the city council, where they will make the final decision. All right, and the city council meets first Tuesday of the month.
All right, I'll just say thank you for granting the request, and thank you for working on a cold day.
Thank you, sir. All right. So next item on the agenda is Applicant Colby Pack, representing Solid Ace Holdings LLC, is requesting a rezone for property located at 1350 West Cage, being parcel R33659, block 23, lot 3B of the S6200 Southside Edition of the City of Stephenville, Erath County, Texas, from R3 multifamily residential to 2.5 integrated housing. Mr. Killen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Mr. Colby Pack is here tonight. If we have any additional questions, he does have interest in rezoning this property to allow for future development. When he and I spoke, he did not have a full decision made on what he would build on that property. I think he does kind of lean towards duplex style housing, and so that was to be determined when we met. I want to point out that it's currently zoned R3, and with R3 you can have multifamily development at a density of 24 units per acre. The maximum density with R2.5 would be townhomes, which would be limited to 14 units per acre. So he's asking for a rezone that would allow for a lesser density than what is currently zoned for. Future land use for this is community core. If we read the community core definition for the 2050 comprehensive plan, it does allow for diverse housing types and then also local businesses. So that would be similar to a mixture of maybe B1 or B3 type zoning as you currently are familiar with. And so with that, Madam Chair, I'd be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Steve? Or Mr. Pack, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Basically, what we're trying to do here is provide more parking in front of the building. So we're gonna scoot the building back on the lot a little bit, get everybody off the street and try to get everybody off of that street. So setback was 25 foot off the back property line. We're wanting to go back to more like a 15 foot, which is our 2.5. So there I can scoot the building back and provide more paid parking up front.
All right, thank you, sir.
Basically, because that's been a problem for a while.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak for or against this rezone request? I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, we need a motion.
I'll move to recommend approval for RZ 2025-007.
Second.
Nick got in just before you, Bonnie. All right, do we need to discuss? All those in favor of recommending to council approval of this rezone request, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, thank you, Mr. Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Pack.
All right, next up, discussion of B2 zoning permitted and conditional uses. I'm assuming this is all you, Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. You may recall some discussions there. We had a rezone request for a property, B2 property. It was a rezone request to allow for an industrial use. If you recall back on that discussion, B2 zoning does not allow for paint and body shops. Industrial zoning does. So now, the interesting thing about that is we can have B2 and industrial uses side by side, and one can have a paint and body shop and one cannot. Now, years ago, and I did ask the fire marshal, Mr. Greg Schrump, to be here tonight in case we need to get into some discussions about fire safety requirements. You might recall maybe years and years ago, paint booths were not as highly regulated as they are now, and there was a greater safety concern associated with paint booths. And I'm assuming that's probably where some of those requirements came into place, where that we would only allow them in industrial districts. But again, if you look at our zoning map, we can have industrial districts that actually border B2 districts. So the delineation there is a little, I guess, fuzzy at best. So this particular situation was brought before City Council after coming to P&Z. It was for a particular property in town. What the committee has asked us to do is look at revising the conditional uses for B2, the retail and commercial district, And this would not just apply to one property in particular, it would apply to all B2 zoning district properties. What they asked staff to do was to provide some revisions for review, and then for the Planning and Zoning Commission to review those revisions and see if you could give a recommendation back to council on how to proceed. And so, in the document, in your report, we have drafted a ordinance. This is just a draft. You see, we have some highlights there, so we've been working on this for a while and waiting to get it back on the agenda. Basically, what we've done is taken the definition of conditional use, which applies to all conditional uses for every zoning district. And what we've done is taken that definition, which has been, it has read in the past that it is a permitted use in a particular district. Thank you, Jeff. In a particular district only upon the fulfillment of conditions set forth for that use in the use regulations for the appropriate district. So when we read that, it's basically saying you gotta meet the regulations of the district and then conditions that we apply to the permit. I've researched this and looked at what other cities had for the definition. I found a model definition that I liked a lot. I believe it was from maybe the city of Cleveland. And what I put together was basically just a little more detail on how we define conditional use. So it's wordsmithed a little bit differently. It's there in front of you. But basically, a conditional use allows the city council, and this is seen in other cities, it's not something that we're inventing the wheel on. It allows the city council to place conditions on it as a conditional use, and those conditions have to be met for that permit to remain in effect. If they don't meet those conditions, then the permit becomes null and void. And so, these are not necessarily listed to be an all-inclusive list, and not in every case would the city council require every condition listed. It's just to define what types of conditions can be placed on a conditional use permit. To be a little more, lack of a better term, definitive on what we're trying to accomplish when we issue a conditional use. In the past, it was basically, does it meet the land use regulations? Yes, and then that was the end of the conditional use permit. What we're doing now is just trying to define that this committee and the council would have more authority to say if we want, for this business to be here, we want additional landscaping, then that's authorized through a conditional use action. The only district that we're wanting this to apply to as far as including auto paint and body shops is again the B2 zoning district. B2 zoning district is that section 154.062C that's listed on that table. And so those would be the only two revisions that we would bring forward. First being the definition expansion and clarification. Second being that the paint and body would apply to the B2 district in addition to the industrial will remain a use by right. B2 would become only upon a conditional use permit. And I hope that answered or provided some clarification on what we're looking for. Action tonight would be to either recommend that the city council accept these proposed revisions, deny the proposed revisions, or if there are additional thoughts that the commission would like to be considered, we could forward that to the council as well. So be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Steve?
I feel like I should know this, but a conditional use, is it tied to the property, to the owner, to the business? How, I can't remember.
So it's tied to the property, but the conditions would pass forward to the new business. So tied to the property, but anything in operation there would have to meet the conditional use permit.
And something you said a minute ago, to meet the conditional use permit and then to maintain it basically as well moving forward.
You'd have to maintain those conditions as
For
existing
perpetuity,
business.
or
So,
it can be
yes, sir.
withdrawn.
So those conditions would apply for that permit. The permit would remain in effect until someone chose not to adhere to the conditions.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Why wouldn't we just go ahead and ask them just to rezone into industrial and cover it all without conditions?
So, great question. On the one that we did bring forward for a rezone request, that failed.
Right.
It failed, thinking back on that, and why we might consider the conditional use is because this would actually grant the council more authority, and this commission, as a recommendation to council, would grant you the ability to place more regulations on that business than what even the industrial use would allow as a permitted use. So, gives a little more opportunity for a B2 property to be considered for a paint and body shop, but it also gives this commission and the city council the ability to limit or regulate that business through the conditions placed on the permit.
How does this fit in with the comprehensive plan, with the new comprehensive plan?
The new comprehensive plan, you might recall the term Euclidean compared to form-based.
Mm-hmm.
And the new comprehensive plan is indeed a paradigm shift in the way we think about things. Euclidean zoning is what we currently have been operating under, which is everything has to fit into a certain box and meet all of these regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Form-based starts looking at more of how does this property and this type of business fit in with adjacent properties. You might recall my comment earlier, we have industrial properties sitting directly adjacent to B2 properties. And in one case, we have a tire shop sitting right next to a building that someone wanted to use for a paint and body shop. Maybe years ago, a paint booth, and I'm sure the fire marshal can speak and add clarity to this, lots of regulations that are in effect today for paint booths did not exist years ago. And so I may be speculating here, but I'm assuming that's why we wanted that separation, even though the separation may not even amount to a matter of feet in some of our zoning districts.
But as we shift, this will all kind of become moot?
It becomes where we can have more latitude in considering the type of use for the property, based on the surrounding area. If
Mm-hmm.
complete neighborhood, as we mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
different housing types. The next level up allows for business use and residential in the same area. I was thinking about like a bodega in a residential area. So it's again, it's a paradigm shift, and one that we've mentioned that several times throughout the process when we were looking at going to that type of comprehensive plan. The main thing is it would allow us to do is to start thinking about how to get affordable housing into areas that really, when the R2.5 zoning district was created, that's kind of where that was kind of the purpose behind that to begin with, was to allow these infill areas a means of providing infill housing at a lower, smaller square footage requirement, smaller lot requirement, but at a lower density than what had previously been provided for through the R3 zoning. So I may be rambling at this point, but it's
It's a good refresher.
trying to,
Yeah.
That comprehensive plan is definitely gonna be a learning curve for myself, and I'm assuming for a lot of people that have responsibilities such as this commission.
Thank you. Any other questions for Steve?
So on the conditional use, like, let's just, for instance, say that it's by a school, and I know they have paint booths, and the paint booths are probably supposed to break down some of the fumes. Is there any way to like regulate it more to where they can, like where we can say that you gotta have a carbon air filter instead of just a regular filter? Just to like kill the fumes, cause if the wind's blowing just right and there's kids outside and they have to suffer, I'm like wondering if that's gonna be covered in like, I guess the modifications maybe? Like, can we, whenever it comes that time?
So when we look at the definition, I don't think it necessarily limits the authority of what you can ask for on a conditional use permit.
Okay.
I mean, I guess you
Including
could
but not
certainly-
limited to.
I guess you could certainly ask for something that granular, and it would be up to the applicant if they wanted to provide that or not as contingency on actually getting the conditional use permit. Again, the definition was written to basically show that there's a lot of latitude granted to the city when we consider a permit for something that doesn't necessarily fit directly into the permitted uses of the district.
Okay. I mean, I don't really know anything about paint auto or anything like that, but I do know that it puts off fumes, so, and it's, I don't know, if you'd consider it to be a high-density area, or, but I would just think the public safety,
Mhm.
so.
And also, going back to the example earlier about it being next to a tire shop, which doesn't fall in the same category.
Should we have a public hearing so we enter into discussion? I think
Yeah,
we're in
yeah,
general discussion
yeah.
right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
let's
why
do
don't,
that.
why don't we, go ahead and open a public hearing to see if anybody here wants to speak for or against this, what are we calling it?
Proposed revision.
Proposed revision. All right, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, let's have a, motion and then we can discuss.
Make a motion, we recommend the city council adopt the proposed revisions.
Second.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Okay, but anyway, going back to a possible scenario where you got the tire shop next to the paint shop. If the paint shop, which has more combustible, materials than a tire shop's gonna have, that fire bleeds over to the adjacent tire shop, it becomes one major, huge fire, which becomes a hazmat situation. And say it's in a school area, and the winds are blowing just right, we've gotta evacuate a ton of students out. And then also if there's apartments or any other major businesses nearby, you've gotta evacuate all that out as well, because of the type of fire it is.
But we could choose not to, you know, not to grant the conditional use next to a school
But
for that
with,
reason.
we can make that recommendation, but then it's on city council to override us, and if they overrode us, then it takes away this authority. I just feel that we need to leave it as an industrial, situation and try not to have any other conditions for these.
I like having all these conditions. I think it gives us a lot more control. And currently our industrial, as Steve has said, is all over the place and crazy. I got, you know, Bosque River is industrial, you know what I mean? Like, we have bigger fish to fry than trying to keep our industrial pure because it isn't pure. And this allows us control.
Industrial allows a lot.
That's true.
So, and once it's zoned industrial, it's industrial.
Right.
There's no, and then the future is it could be anything inside of that industrial. With this, it's very heavily restricted.
But if it was to come back to us as an industrial, rezone, we could then take a look at all the properties nearby and see if it's gonna affect schools, apartment complexes
Do
and
the same
stuff.
thing with the conditional use.
With the option of being overrode though.
But we always can be overrode.
Same with the
I
industrial.
mean, same with the industrial, that goes to city council as well. We always are just recommending. We have no real power.
I feel it's a can of worms. So that's where I'm at.
All right, we ready to vote? All right, all those in favor of recommending to council approval of this,
Proposed revision.
proposed revision, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Me.
Dustin and Brian. Okay, then that is 2/3, right? So that goes forth to council with a positive recommendation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. Okay, I believe that's it. We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you all for coming out. Did you get all your questions answered?